right, good evening, everyone. This is a public meeting of the Board of Adjustment of the Borough of New Providence, County of Union, and the State of New Jersey. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, in that a notice was made in conformance with Section 13 of the Act. I'd like to introduce Margaret Kuntz, our Board Secretary, and ask Margaret to please take the roll call.
Chairman Nadelberg?
Present.
Mr. Amitsbo?
Present.
Mr. Grove will not be here. Mr. Morgan?
Here.
Mr. Ping?
Here.
Mr. Rossi?
Here.
Mr. Sirochin?
Present.
And Mr. O, I don't know. He's not here.
Thank you. Also representing the borough this evening are our experts, Keith Lynch, our zoning official. We are awaiting Marie Raffay, our professional engineer, and next to Keith is McKinley Mertz, our professional planner. You'll also notice that I have to my left Amanda Wolf, our board attorney, who's to guide us through any legal issues that we might come across. If you're scheduled for a hearing before this board tonight, it's most likely because you want to make changes to your property that are for some reason not in compliance with our local ordinances. At this meeting, you'll be asked to give sworn testimony describing what it is you wish to do, where you run into challenges with the ordinances of our borough, and why you feel you should be granted a variance. Members of the board will then ask you questions about your plans and requests. Through our questions, we're assuring that the information necessary either to approve or deny your request is made part of the public record. Please note that any comments made by any one or more of the members of this board are simply their own opinions. Those opinions should not be construed as the board's suggestion to you to try to change your design of your application in any way, shape, or form, nor does your decision to act upon that opinion or suggestion guarantee the board's approval of your application. After our questioning, we'll open the floor to anyone else who wishes to ask questions that pertain directly to the testimony given. Those questions must only be challenges to or clarification of that prior sworn testimony. Then at the end of all testimony and questions, there'll be time for personal comments from the public, either for or against the application. Because we are waiting for our professional engineer, we're going to do some busy work first. First, we have some resolutions from our last meeting. Margaret sent those out. Hopefully everybody got a chance to review them. The first one is Jonathan Raybuck at 846 Central Avenue. They were looking for permission to construct a deck, and they had some setback issues. Did everyone read the resolution? Any comments on it? Questions? No?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move forward with the resolution.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. And poll the board, please, Margaret.
Mr. Amitsbo?
Yes, please.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Sirochin?
Yes.
And Chairman Nadelberg?
Yes. The second application that we had sent out to us, resolution I should say, is the Ivy Express Incorporated at 1266 Springfield Avenue, looking to operate the outpatient infusion therapy center. Any questions on that one?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mitch. And poll the board, Margaret.
Mr. Amitsbo?
Yes, please.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Sirochin?
Yes.
And Chairman Nadelberg?
Yes. While we have a moment, are going to go over the minutes that were presented from our last meeting.
There's one more
We don't want to do
resolution.
Shagan?
Yeah, we have an extension.
The extension. Okay, thank you. Yeah, there was a request for an extension from Shagun Holdings 3 LLC, 17-31 High Street, for an additional, what was it, 190 days.
I don't see any reason why not. So, motion to approve. Letter looks fine as far as, and I'm sure you can tell us if it wasn't, properly.
Yeah, the letter was just requesting, they have to file a plat or deed within 190 days, and they didn't do that because they were working on
Yeah.
other approvals, so they're just looking for another 190 days, which I
Yeah,
don't think
looks
is
like
unreasonable.
Waiting on the county planning board?
Right.
Yeah. So, seems reasonable to me, so motion to
He has a
approve.
motion. You have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Thank you. And poll the board, please, Margaret.
And this is to memorialize as well, because you do have a draft resolution.
Yeah.
So we need a motion on the resolution as well.
Right. It can be the same
do it?
movement, though. Just amend your motion.
Same, amend the motion to both.
Second for that?
Second.
There you go. Now, poll.
Mr. Amitsbo?
Yes, please.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Sirochin?
Yes.
And Chairman Nadelberg?
Yes. As I was saying, there are minutes from the June 17th meeting that Margaret sent out. Everybody get a chance to review. Any questions or comments? No. So look for a motion to accept those.
Without Jeff here, I'll say they were swell.
In deference to Jeff.
Yes, in deference to Jeff, we'll say they were swell and make a motion to approve.
Second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. So I think at this point, the board can take a look for their hearings that are set for the next meeting of July 15th. Take a visit to those properties, and we will hear them before us at our next meeting.
I will be absent from that meeting.
You'll be absent?
Okay. Jeff will also be absent for that, too, so,
We're going to be pretty thin there, then.
yeah.
We're thin, but we don't have any D variances, so we
Right.
should be
No.
okay.
I'm here.
All right, so at this point, we will take a break while we wait for Ms. Raffay to show, and we'll be back with you shortly.
Because she was in the restaurant?
Fair
Did you bring your guitar? I did not.
Do you want me to play a little music on my cell phone?
Are we not speaking loud enough? Okay. Thank you. We'll get you.
I am though, right?
Okay, so Marie says she's leaving at 8:01.
Yeah,
She
okay,
should
no
be
worries.
here by-
Thank you.
Well, she runs into water main construction.
She's coming last week for that.
I know.
Do you want this as a spare?
I can give you a light show.
There you
Oh,
go.
nice.
Is it the button you're not supposed to push?
That's a wonderful.
Oh, okay. Don't push the button you're not supposed to push. There's way too many people.
So sweet. Such a great photo. Aw, she looks so happy. It's wonderful. I love her dress.
Todd, that soccer game.
You like his
That game is starting
Can
without
we
us.
talk like we do at the end? I just, you know, when I wanted to let you guys know.
We're on the record.
No, I know, but we, that house in question.
It was played Thursday, the day before. And one of them said to my son,
They built it to sell.
family.
That was needed forever.
Oh,
I'm making an
We brought in a little thing of it.
he brought that up.
My
Oh, I
husband's
was,
and my
was I late
husband's
to the one?
get along so well. They vacation together.
Yeah.
They go to Canada together. They
Because he got the mailer in the mail.
Yeah.
Saying for
They just
sale.
up without us.
Before the construction was
We get
done.
it with in-laws.
Yeah, because that was there forever. I didn't more than that. That's somebody's house.
No, that's nice. And
I didn't
it
hear you
means they'll
guys
keep
talking
them
about that
close
yet.
too.
I know everybody was huddled over there talking. Is that what you, they were talking
That's the house I need to find.
Oh, no, it was
Yeah.
heated from up
Where
here.
they were.
He brought it up a couple of times.
Perfect time.
Yeah, at the end of all
There we
this.
go.
Moving in with us. She thinks it'll be before where find it.
Yeah.
Plan on 2 years.
It sounds like a good trip.
Can't plan the market like that.
Think about it, when somebody says, and you're like, yeah.
Put on, how do you like it? A QR code. People send photos to this Google.
Okay, so our planner has arrived. We can continue with the hearing that is scheduled for this evening that was carried from August 21st, September 11th, October 16th, December 18th, 2023, and May 6th, 2024. It is Lantern Hill New Providence LLC at 535 and 603 Mountain Avenue. And Mr. Pantel, please come forward and tell us what you've got for us tonight.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be before you this evening. And a few items I would like to take care of in my opening remarks. For one, there was a fair amount of discussion at our last meeting or so about pickleball court. And we have decided to remove the pickleball court from these plans. Obviously, that's without prejudice. A future application could conceivably include it, but we are proposing that this approval would not encompass the approval of the pickleball court. We have an exhibit that depicts that. In place of where the pickleball court was, we are simply proposing a community garden. And where the community garden was, as you'll see on the inset of that exhibit, which I'd like to have identified and marked as Exhibit A21, there will be lawn area, i.e. lawn area in place of where the community garden was previously proposed near Southgate Road. And instead, what was previously proposed as a pickleball court will now be a community garden. And that's Exhibit A21. I think the exhibit speaks for itself, along with maybe my very brief explanation of it that I was just glad to provide to the board. Obviously, that puts that issue to bed, since it's no longer, the pickleball court is not any longer part of this application. Secondly, the board will recall, of course, that there had been at our prior meeting, as there had been at a couple of other meetings, considerable discussion regarding ambulance service. And I'm pleased to advise that that issue has similarly been resolved. Essentially, the board has received the report of the police chief and mayor, borough administrator, and Jessica Short, president of the New Providence Rescue Squad, dated June 4th. And that report memorializes, if you will, the confirmation from those borough officials that there is no longer an ambulance concern with respect to the application. Specifically, it advises that the police department, the borough administration, the emergency management department, and New Providence Emergency Medical Services, i.e. a rescue squad, have expressed satisfaction with the steps taken by Erickson Living in response to our now resolved concerns, demonstrating our shared commitment to public safety within the borough. And as part of that commitment, the applicant is certainly prepared to abide by the prior understanding that it would provide a tally of its ambulance service calls with subtotals showing the number of calls handled by the different services, that we would make available on request to an ambulance service provider a parking space which would have access to electricity so the ambulance facilities can be charged in that parking space, and that we would also provide, upon request, an EMT break room, as we previously showed this board at your last meeting, and that's shown on Exhibit A20. We also have agreed to provide the board with evidence of a contract or service provider agreement with an ambulance service for medical transport and or emergency medical response before issuance of the CO. And that's a perpetual requirement, and that we would also, upon request, participate in periodic meetings with the borough regarding ambulance services. I think it was recognized that ambulance service issues are a regional need that obviously cannot be totally resolved by Erickson, but I think we have certainly gone the extra mile in undertaking to do as much as we reasonably can in order to address that concern. I think it's also fair to point out that this application before you is, of course, an application for amended site plan approval, which, if approved, would actually reduce the number of units in total by 218, representing a reduction of 18% in the total number of units on the site. If there is no conversion, as we've requested, of the 45 independent living units to 85 healthcare units, if we do that conversion, which is of course part of the application, there's still a very substantial reduction of 178 units if this application is proposed, i.e. a 15% reduction. So that ties in to the comment that was made in that June 4th memo that I just referenced, where those parties signing off on that memo, again, including the police chief, mayor, and Jessica Short, and Ms. Caccaro, indicated that it should also be noted that since the amended site plan approval would actually reduce the total number of previously approved CCRC units, the requested approval is expected in turn to reduce the projected number of ambulance trips that would have resulted from build-out of the previously approved CCRC. So we do have that substantial reduction in place. So if there are no further questions, if there are no questions for me, I should say no further, if there are no questions for me, what I would propose that we do is to simply proceed with the remainder of the hearing, which I assume would entail public comment, and I would, of course, reserve the right to make a closing statement to the board.
Mr. Pintelli, I do have one question.
course.
Is there any, I know we talked a little bit last meeting about the left-hand turn off
Yes.
Mountain Avenue.
Mhm.
Any updates to that?
Yes.
Or
Absolutely. Number one, we have made submission to the Union County of an engineered plan. It was just made actually within the last week or so to obtain approval of that left turn lane. And we also stipulate to the condition that the left turn lane from eastbound Mountain Avenue into the site is to be installed before issuance of the CO for the third building in neighborhood 2.
Great.
And the plans have been engineered now. They're into the county.
Thanks, Mr. Pintelli.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a question on your, you said a periodic, just a question you said
Yes.
in your statement there on a periodic review of you know, the services and so forth. What kind of period were you thinking, like annually or whenever
No,
appropriate?
I'm thinking that there could be, regular contact between us and the borough. We didn't button it down to weekly, monthly, quarterly, but I would envision probably something along the lines between monthly and quarterly to maintain a good channel of communication. Obviously, upon request, and by the same token, I think either party should be free to make the request to have a meeting, because I think communication is a big part of the solution, and as is transparency, and you see we've stipulated that we will provide that tally of calls that I referred to.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else? Yep. Go ahead, then.
Okay.
I do have one question.
Of course.
I don't mean to go back
To the microphone, Marie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to go back to this left turn lane, but I think that at the last meeting, I think what we landed on was that you wouldn't get a construction permit for building number 3 until that left turn lane was installed. Is that right?
I think there may have been some discussion. I don't think it came to a conclusion that way, is my honest
Okay.
recollection. And more likely than not, it would happen before building permit, but I suppose if the applicant had a very high level of confidence, wanted to proceed with construction at their risk, I think they're putting their money where their mouth is when they say they have to have it before that third CO.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, thank you.
thank you.
Do you have a preference, Ms. Raffay?
No, I was just, I think there was extensive discussion about that at the last meeting, and I just wanted to clarify that. And, I'm kind of looking through my notes, and sometimes I know we have discussions and we meander off and we come back, and it looks to me like what we landed on was that we were concerned that there's a building sitting there, and that then you don't have the left turn lane, and then there's no reason to push it further. And
I thought it was
I
the
just
beginning
didn't-
of construction, too.
What was that?
Yeah. No,
There
I
was-
think this is, I just confer with my client for a moment. So to clarify what we can do, I think it would satisfy this question. We would get the approval before the construction permit, install it before CO. So you know that once we don't get that construction permit until it's approved, so we don't end up with a situation where we built this building and it's not approved yet. Okay, so approval before construction permit, construction before third CO.
I think that's what we're looking for.
I think
And
that
as
was
long
what
as
the
it's
board
clear,
was looking for.
and I know we
Yeah.
discussed like all three,
Mhm.
is it the permit, is it the beginning of construction, is it the CO? But I like the duality of this, right?
Yeah.
The approval from the county that it will be installed before you can get the permit, and then the actual installation of the left turn lane before you can occupy the building. I think that's fair and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything? No? Okay.
Okay, so I will step down so you can open to the public.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Oh, actually, sorry.
No problem.
Back to the question that was just asked about the numbers and the frequency. Would you be able to, or willing to stipulate to a minimum quarterly numbers, or at least submitting numbers quarterly? It doesn't have to be a meeting, but I think there's value in at least ensuring that the process is simple and repeatable and the numbers are being collected, because that
To
way...
submit numbers, submit the tally quarterly, is
Yeah.
what you're suggesting? I think so. 1 second.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, so no less
We
than
can do that.
quarterly. If you want to do it more often, or the town makes requests and you guys agree, that's fine, but I think there should be some stake in the ground.
Yeah, I'm putting that in my notes here. So the tally would be quarterly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so at this point, actually, since you gave some new testimony to us here, is there any questions from the audience of the testimony you heard from Mr. Pantel? Audience questions? Yes, come forward, please, to a microphone.
And if you could just give us your name and address when you ask your question.
John Peoples, 603 Mountain Avenue, New Providence, in other words, Lantern Hill. A question for Mr. Pantel, or at least a couple of them. The letter stated that there were concerns. Would you emphasize or restate what those concerns were? Sounds like there were plural concerns regarding EMS. It's the last sentence of the third paragraph.
I can respond to that.
You can use the microphone right in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't need to regurgitate them. They're on the record. There were any number of comments made by Chief Henn and the mayor at various meetings regarding the issue. It's also reflected in various reports. It's all in the record.
I've been at all the meetings, personally, and in particular, Chief Henn last time did not state that the concerns were overcome. In fact, I remember one board member saying, "You've given us a hope and not a plan." And I feel like we're still at that point. This seemed like a large jump from the letter of April 24th, this letter of June 4th,
Well, I think
which all of a sudden...
they had subsequent meetings between those two dates, correct, Mr. Pantel?
There was subsequent communication, yes,
Subsequent communications between whom or among whom?
with representatives of the borough and representatives of Erickson addressing this issue.
Okay, so we were not privy to those. The conclusion then is what you're stating in the last sentence of paragraph 3.
What we're stating in the last sentence is that, it's not what I'm stating, it's what Chief Henn, Chief of Police and Emergency Management Coordinator, and Mayor Morgan, and Jessica Short, President of the Rescue Squad, and Bernadette Caccaro, the Borough Administrator, have made that statement indicating that their concerns are now resolved, demonstrating shared commitment between Erickson and the borough to public safety within the borough. And I might also add that that letter makes the point in the preceding paragraph that, as I just mentioned a moment ago, that there is a reduction in the number of units in in Lantern Hill if this application were to be approved. It would be a reduction of either 218 units If there's no conversion of of independent living units to healthcare units, or a reduction of 178 units from what was previously approved, if there is that conversion of independent living units to healthcare units, and obviously with reduction of that scale of 218 units or 178 units, it's certainly fair to expect that there will be reduction in impact on local ambulance service if this application is approved, as opposed to our proceeding with the application that has currently been approved.
Okay, the last point was that Erickson Senior Living was aided in resolving these concerns. How did they aid in resolving those concerns?
Well, number one, we are reducing the number of units along the lines that I have just explained a few times this evening.
That's not how Erickson was involved.
Erickson obviously is proposing a change to its previous approvals that would result in a reduction of either 178 or 218 units. That's obviously a significant factor. Additionally, we have agreed, as I just outlined, to those various follow-up items. I don't think I need to repeat them again, but we have agreed to all those different follow-up items that have also been referenced by me this evening. Those are all positive factors addressing ambulance service.
Mr. Peoples, they also, Erickson has agreed to and testified that they'll have a, where they can stage an ambulance on site, as well as have a break room for EMT, so
I wanted to hear that from Mr. Pantel, actually.
Put it in
It
the
was
record
already put
multiple
in,
times.
it's in the record.
Yeah, it's on the record.
Okay.
And I did state it a moment ago, actually. Maybe you didn't hear me state it, but I did state that a moment ago. I'm sure the board heard me.
Yep.
Let me ask you about that ambulance. Is it still being placed where it was in the drawing from last time, which showed the ambulance, the walking path, the seat, etc.? Is that still the plan for where the ambulance is?
Yes, that was on Exhibit 820 at the last meeting.
Did you walk that path at all?
I haven't walked that path.
Should you have walked the path? Should
I'm the
anybody
attorney
have
for
walked?
the applicant. I don't need to have walked that path.
May I show you what that path is?
Well, this is just the time for questions right now, so at the very end of the
comments.
hearing, you can make comments, and you can introduce any evidence that you'd like.
This seems very logical. I want to ask, when I show you,
No, I understand, but there's some procedures that we have to follow, and one of them is that we have a time for questions, and then we have a time for comments. So I know it doesn't seem to make sense, because you just want to ask a question about what we're talking about, but it's at the very end. Well, it's actually not at the very end, it's probably going to be in like 3 minutes or so, but then you can make a comment. So you'll have to sit down and come back up. I know it sounds silly, but...
okay, are you going to be addressing healthcare units and IL units and the reduction? The agenda said that now there's going to be no conversion, apparently. All of the healthcare units from neighborhood 2 are being eliminated, and they're all being placed in neighborhood 1. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. No, the exhibits before the board and the testimony that's been given at various times make it very clear that with respect to neighborhood 2, which is currently approved for 554 independent living units and 108 healthcare units, is proposed now to reduce it down to 444 independent living units and no new healthcare units. Bear with me for a moment. No new healthcare units unless there's a conversion. We'll get to the conversion in a moment. For neighborhood 1, the existing neighborhood, there's currently 446 independent living units and 85 healthcare units for a total of 531. We're not proposing changes there except, again, in the event of conversion. If the conversion takes place, it can take place in neighborhood 1 and or neighborhood 2 to allow the conversion of 45 independent living units to 85 healthcare units, which could take place in either neighborhood 1 or neighborhood 2, or in part in neighborhood 1 and neighborhood 2.
Okay, so it's not a strictly either or, there's an allocation possible. So 5 units could go into neighborhood 1 and 80 units into neighborhood 2.
It could happen in different combinations, yes.
And when would that be decided? Because
Based
this
upon
building is not for 4 or 5 years. I picture a scene where you might allocate all 85 to neighborhood 2, because it's not going to be built out for 4 or 5 years. Neighborhood 1 will have no additional healthcare units. Is that feasible?
Well, neighborhood, if there's a need for, if all of the conversion takes place in neighborhood 2, then neighborhood 1 residents can certainly have the availability of neighborhood 1 healthcare units. You would be able to get from any single building in neighborhood 1 or neighborhood 2 to any other point in the entire Lantern Hill complex without climbing a single stair and without stepping foot outside. So,
But that's 5 years down the road. I'm asking tomorrow.
The I just explained how the conversion can take place and where it can take place. It can take place at any time in the future in accordance with those numbers I just explained.
What is a healthcare unit?
A healthcare unit can be an assisted living unit, be a memory care unit, or it can be a nursing unit.
Okay, an independent living unit.
Independent living unit is one of the independent living apartments in the Lantern Hill Continuing Care Retirement.
If there's a
Community.
private aid in an independent living unit, does that become a healthcare unit?
No.
If it's
Still
a
an
paid
independent living
aid,
unit. It's still an independent living unit.
that
If you're
is
allowed to
contrary to
have
the
a, if you're
definition
still
of the
allowed to,
borough.
if you're still allowed to have an aid, it's still an independent living unit. The conversion of units does not happen merely because a resident may have an aid on perhaps an occasional basis or whatever. The units are physical different units for independent apartments on the one hand versus assisted living units, memory care units, and skilled nursing units, which are akin to a nursing home on the other hand.
Okay, well, that's contrary to the definition in the ordinances.
No, it's not.
It sounds to me like that if you have a paid aid, that becomes a healthcare unit. Because an independent unit says it does not require an
Now we're
aid.
getting into argument, which I think is inappropriate. There was an opportunity to ask a question. I answered the questions. If you disagree with my answer, that's your prerogative.
What happens if you answer the question wrongly?
You can make
There's
your
people
point
that-
to the board.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope I made my point to the board.
Yeah, maybe. And you're welcome back for comments, as we said. Anyone else have any questions of Mr. Pantel?
Alan Swanson, 47 Overhill Road. I just have a quick question about, oh dear. The question is about the getting together and meeting about the status of the EMS. Would there be an anticipation that the outcomes of those or the monitoring of the EMS situation as it relates to Lantern Hill would be made public information?
The data that we provide to the borough, I imagine would be made public. That would be up to the borough and perhaps Oprah laws, but we'll provide the information to the borough, and I would imagine it could be made available to the public.
Just wanted to get on record. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Yes, come forward, please. Name and address, please.
Alexander J. Pereira, 92 Pine Way, New Providence. Just want to say I did just quickly review that letter. I'm pleased to see there is a letter from the various departments and agencies there. As a brief aside, I am a member and officer of the squad. I do not speak on behalf of the squad at all.
Can I just ask a question? Are you asking a question?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm just saying I was pleased to see that happened. That's the first I'm seeing of it, though. Could you give more specifics on what the plan that was reached or the agreement that was reached is that has made our officers and leaders say that they're now satisfied after last meeting and previous meetings' remarks?
Sure. It's really what I've already indicated this evening, is that first and foremost, let's bear in mind that this application will represent a reduction in
I
protected...
don't mean to cut you off. I'm just saying more on the ambulance and EMS side. Is there a specific outside agency that is going to be used to supplement the volunteer rescue squad here in New Providence to handle, regardless of, it's good to see that it will be potentially a decreased overall increase, but it's still a significant increase. Is there an outside unit? Because at the September 11th meeting, you mentioned that Atlantic is only covering somewhere between 39 and 50% of calls to the facility, which I was surprised that you didn't even know the exact amount. But Atlantic's only covering that amount, meaning the volunteers are covering the rest. If they're still only covering that amount, and we're adding more units, it's more calls. So is there another outside agency? Is there now a commitment Atlantic has to make to a certain amount of calls? What's the measure that's been introduced and agreed to?
Okay, well, I've explained time after time what we are proposing to do to mitigate impact on a local ambulance service. First and foremost, I don't think it's fair to be dismissive of the fact that this application will reduce the number of units by between 178 and 218, as opposed to our proceeding with construction of what we could legally proceed with now. So I don't think it's at all fair or reasonable to dismiss that point, number one. Number two, there have been additional discussions with Atlantic Health and with Union County regarding the potential for them to handle even additional portions of ambulance service that they currently provide. And we fully expect that could very well pan out in terms of further reducing the impact on local ambulance service. I obviously can't speak for, and don't purport to speak for, the mayor, the police chief, and the president of your rescue squad, but it's clear that they have come to the conclusion that this application does not pose any problematic impacts at this point on local ambulance service requirements. I don't think I need to go through again that list of items that I did read previously, showing our commitment to further alleviate service. And responding to your question, I do note that there has been additional communication with Union County, which has expressed an interest in furthering its commitment to servicing this part of Union County, this northern part of Union County, where including New Providence and a couple of other...
But at this point, there is no agreement.
Excuse me, I was in the middle of a sentence. To service this part of Union County, which would include New Providence and some other adjacent municipalities. We are not... this is a regional issue. This is inherently beneficial use. The variance relief and site plan relief that we are seeking do not in any way increase burdens on ambulance service over and above what was previously approved. In fact, it would decrease it. And that needs to be borne in mind as opposed to just coming back time after time to the same points that have now been resolved with your police chief, your president of rescue squad, the mayor, and borough administrator.
Understand, I'm not trying to dismiss the reduction. I think the reduction overall units is a very good thing. But just to confirm, there is no current existing agreement between Erickson Living and either Atlantic Ambulance or Union County to provide on-site coverage.
That's not correct at all.
But there's no discounting the agreement that Atlantic already has with Erickson. There's no new agreements being made in this variance to increase coverage.
Atlantic Health has committed to us to continue to enhance its service. There is previous testimony, and I can reiterate tonight, that Atlantic Health has put in place a quite unique program in which it has quarterly training classes, essentially at an EMT university program, to bring in people who once admitted to the program are Atlantic Health employees even before they go through the course and are passed. The course has a high but not 100% pass and completion rate, and those individuals that do pass on a quarterly basis then become full-time EMTs for Atlantic Health, beefing up their capacity to service us. This is a relatively new development which has happened post-pandemic. As we explained previously, and as a member of the rescue squad, you might have, I suspect, some familiarity with the phenomenon that did occur during the pandemic, whereby there was substantial reductions in manpower, unfortunately, in the count of EMT personnel providing ambulance services. It wasn't unique to Atlantic Health. It was a phenomenon that was region-wide, probably statewide. In any event, Atlantic Health has stepped up to beef up its commitment to bring in, on a quarterly basis, more and more ambulance employees in the form of trained and certified EMTs. And we've made that point, was brought to the board's attention previously, and it continues to be a commitment on the part of Atlantic Health, which does have an agreement with Erickson, and we have agreed as part of our commitment to the borough to provide on a perpetual basis evidence of our agreements with ambulance service providers.
Glenn, can I interrupt you? That was very good. I can see where this line of questioning, as well as maybe some other residents, might be going. So I want to step in for a second, because the matter that's being discussed and the matter that's in that letter is really not a zoning board matter. That's why the signatures on that letter were not from the zoning board. They were from 4 of the most important people in the borough who have a say about what happens with ambulance services. The use that we've been talking about for 5 or 6 meetings now is permitted. The reason we're at the zoning board is because the driveway connection in neighborhood 1 is not permitted. That's why we're here. So the similar way when you have a permitted use, you take traffic into account for that use, that really cannot be a cause for denial, or it can be a cause for concern, and you certainly want to make sure that it is taken care of. The ambulance service issue is really not for this board at this time. I know we've had a lot of discussion about this, but I'm certainly satisfied with the letter that's been provided by the mayor, the administrator, the police chief, and the president of New Providence EMS. So I would recommend other residents that are concerned about this, because it certainly is a concern. Those 4 people right there, that letter is public. A couple of them are here tonight. I don't want to direct you to them in their inboxes too quickly, but they would happily answer any questions you have. I know, they're great. I just think I can see where we're going here, and it's just really not the avenue for this line of discussion. And Amanda, please tell me.
Yeah, no, I concur with you, and just for purposes of this, who else would you want to sign the letter? I mean,
It's not necessarily about the letter. I think if there's a plan, that's great.
Yeah.
It just doesn't say in that letter, nor has it been expressed to the public by Erickson or anyone else, what it is.
And I don't know
And
if
so
they have
as-
to, because it's more of an internal discussion that had to take place, and I think those discussions have taken place, and that's why we have this letter.
Sure.
because those
Yeah, the
discussions-
reason I'm asking these questions here is just, and I appreciate that insight. I wish that insight could have been given, to be honest, a couple meetings ago. I don't mean that as a dig at you at all. I'm just saying, because it's been like a drawn-out part of this, and so I think the idea in the community has been that is part of this board's purview.
And there certainly is. It is nuanced, because they do need to consider the density of what's happening here, the intensity, I should say, rather than density, and the potential impact. I do think, though, that as a professional, I have to respect other professionals' opinions. So when we have a letter from those 4 people, it, in my mind, satisfies that for now. I get the idea they're also maybe not done with the negotiations in terms of, Mr. Pantel has said a few times that there are thresholds and timeframes that they're trying to meet to increase the number of employees that are going to be able to service the facility from an EMS perspective. So I would imagine that it's still a work in progress, but that whatever those discussions that went on, and I wasn't a part of them, but it got to a point where everybody was satisfied with the capacity that's being proposed.
Yeah, can I make a comment just for you and for the public and to all these great things that you guys have all said? Right, the folks, some of the folks that are on the letter are the ones that raised the concern at a meeting long ago, at this point, many meetings ago, and probably the reason this board took such, so much time digging into that is because when we look at who the people that signed that letter are, right, we've got 4, not just important people, really, we have to look at them as experts, right? And it was the expert opinion of the chief of police the first time they got up here that something had to be done, and of the mayor that something had to be done, and of multiple, members of the public that something had to be done. And I've pushed personally really hard for, fully defined solutions, understanding that that's really hard to get to, but knowing that the harder we push, the more they're going to try and the more they're going to get there. Now we have a letter from experts, really, not just leaders, but who knows better how politics in the borough and in the county works than our mayor? Who knows better than the president of our EMS, how EMS in the region works? Who knows better than our chief of police, what the impact could be to our borough, and understands, with their long history in law enforcement, all of the effects. So we took this super, super seriously, and we still are, but we had one attitude, or I did, based on the input of those experts the first time. Getting this letter, to me says, and I'm hoping that for you as well, says, okay, there might not be defined answers, but in the minds of the experts, the process and the commitments that have been made now have them satisfied, where previously those experts weren't, right? That's a big thing. That's a lot different than just more people coming up and saying, I think that's good enough, that they're trying hard, or we believe them. I'm the one that said hope is not a strategy, right? Mm-hmm. This is past that, right? I wasn't happy hearing, well, we hope this and we hope that. I feel a lot better, and I hope you guys do too, and I hope the public does, that our own experts, our elected officials, our hired officials, people with the experience, feel that this is coming along, right? Because the county's involved, and again, who knows better than the mayor and the chief how the county works and how this could work out, right? Atlantic's been involved, and they've started a whole program. We heard from Mr. Pantel about what they're doing, so I know we can't say yes or no based on just EMS stuff, right? Because that's not what they're here for, but we wanted to take it into consideration and make it a big deal, so they understood that. So, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, just me here on the board, and hopefully, though, helping everybody in the public understand how important that letter is. And we know that they've been meeting a lot, right? So to your point, I have no idea what they said, but I'm going to trust those 4 people that signed that letter that said, especially because they weren't satisfied back last year, and now they are. So something's changed. And I can't second guess every activity that those folks do.
No, sure, and I very much appreciate, especially for me, I very much appreciate those comments and that insight. My purpose of asking questions was just trying to, and exactly as you said, I very much appreciate and am generally happy with that letter. Again, I've only just was shown it, so I had a lot of questions, and that letter, it made me feel much more comfortable, but it didn't answer the questions. So I was just trying to see if we could get on the record some more specifics about what was going to happen, to see if then down the line those things aren't met, there can be recourse. But I appreciate the borough planners.
It's a fair question, Alex.
Yeah.
It's a totally fair question. I don't think it's the consensus of the board that, we couldn't have ever discussed this issue. I don't think you're saying that.
And I didn't mean to imply.
No, I don't think you're saying that.
I think, Hans, you put it really well,
Yeah.
where you wouldn't deny over that, but you need the issue to be discussed and worked out.
Yeah.
And
It's a totally fair question, and I think it was answered, but yeah.
Like I said, I appreciate the borough planner's mention of it's sort of exactly as you guys said, how it sort of passed. So, thank you all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Alex.
Other questions? Okay. At this point, we open up for comments from the public, either for or against the application, and we'll take you one at a time. Yes.
And I will have to swear you in, so.
Would you like to sit down? And
I don't need to sit.
okay.
Good evening.
Your name and address, please?
My name is Carol Pasquale, Pasquale. I'm a resident at 535 Mountain Avenue in New Providence.
Thank you.
I live at Lantern Hill.
Okay, just need you to be sworn in first.
If you would raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God.
Thank you.
I assume that I am still considered a resident of New Providence, even though I live in a senior community. Can that be assumed? Okay. The reason I make that comment is, as a community of senior citizens, we do not require schools, nor parks, nor pools, nor even garbage service. I think we contract for that on our own. But as a senior community, what we do need is dependable ambulance service. It is the biggest need of the people who live in that community. We have paid I have a record of the taxes that we have paid. In 2017, $2,248,588. In 2018, $3,056,856. In 2019, $3,037,799. And 2021, which is the last year I have information about, we paid taxes to New Providence of $4,477,384. And I think for that amount of money that the town reaps from us, we could do something better for the emergency services that we need. You are, by this application, agreeing to double the size of the community. I know they've reduced the number of units and all that higgledy-piggledy, but the fact of the matter is, when you approve this, you are doubling the size of the community. And you are not, am I correct that the rest of the residents in New Providence have the EMS here as their first responders when they dial 911?
I believe so. We don't have any experts on the board to state that in particular, but
That would be my assumption if I lived out in town and dialed 911.
if they're available, it's likely that they would.
Correct. So what I am suggesting to you is if you are going to permit a doubling of the size of this campus, that you ask the town to hire or make a private or a paid EMS service. We cannot depend on volunteers during the day. If we double the size of the campus, you can expect double the numbers of calls, I should think. Why can't you take some of our tax money and provide us with a paid EMS service during the daylight time when there's no volunteers?
Unfortunately, that's not really within the purview of the board, because that's more of a council issue, not to pass the buck or anything like that, but
I know
not.
it's a council issue, but but you are considering whether or not to allow the community to double in size. And the fact of the matter is, we are cash cow for you. And we don't need any other services. So I am questioning your intentions. And even though everybody has signed off on it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. I am 87 years old. I worry about whether when they call the ambulance, it's going to take a half an hour or an hour to get there, because the Atlantic ambulance cannot answer the call, and then EMS has to call somebody else in, the New Providence EMS. I worry about that. I don't worry about the schools, I don't worry about the parks, I don't worry about the pools, but I worry about the ambulance service. And you are agreeing, when you approve this application, to double the size of the community that exists. So that's my public comment.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else have any comments?
Not me, a comment on my phone.
Ms. Pasquale might have just carried to me.
Oh, that's you, sorry.
She has a pink one and a black one.
Yep, she got mine.
Anyone else have any comments on the entire application?
No, no worries at all.
Alan Swanson, 47 Overhill Road.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I affirm that I tell the truth, not on the God.
Thank you.
Okay. The comments that were made tonight are actually very excellent, and this discussion has been very revealing and interesting and important for New Providence. So I'm very pleased that there's been this rather extensive discussion about the EMS, because it's an issue that in the 5 years or so that I've been attending council meetings, and it hasn't been a real issue. I understand we have a volunteer service, and the suggestion of moving towards a professional service is probably something that would be very interesting to be discussing in the future, because the state has reported that the EMS services in this state are in dire straits in terms of volunteers. And for the fire department here, it was mentioned at the last council meeting that they're kind of looking for volunteers on a kind of an important basis right now. I'm very encouraged by the response tonight, and I was heading towards opposing this going forward until there was additional resolution of the EMS issue. So I'm encouraged by the response from the borough, and I appreciate the comments about how important this is, that this has been discussed, even though it's not entirely your issue. Actually, the mayor at the last council meeting pointed out that this was an issue that, it's a little gray area as to what body should be discussing that, and you've actually been mentioning that tonight. So I'm not here in opposition to the development overall. What I am here to say is that because of this discussion that you've had that's been really going on for months over this issue, I think it's important that you pass on the information that you've heard in this process to the council, and let them know that this is an important issue, that there are people who are concerned about it in the town. And especially since we are anticipating that across the street at the previous Lind property, we're going to have another almost 300 senior units going in over the next few years. So that we're not only talking about an additional 400 plus units over at Lantern Hill, but we're going to be close to 300 units over at the Garden Homes property, that's where the demolition is occurring as we speak. So that is the crux of my statement. I think it would be important too, I just would like to point out that if Erickson you did testify as to the length of time, and you extended, based on how the development goes, it could take an extended period of time, 3 to 5 years, actually, I think you said at some point. So I think that would be important for the citizens to know how the progress is going and what's going to be coming in the future, just as a gesture to the citizens of the town. I think that would be very important. And I think that concludes. Yeah, I think that's it. And I appreciate the thoroughness and the amount of time that you spent on this, and I very much appreciate the effort that you've put into this. This has been an important topic for a number of months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson.
Any other comments? Mr. Morgan, come on up.
I do have to swear at you, so don't be offended.
Never.
Thank you.
Not swear at you.
Yes.
Al Morgan, 337 Livingston Avenue.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you
I
God?
do.
Thank you.
A couple comments came up, and I just want to clarify it. I want to thank Erickson, first of all, because they've met with us, I would say, at least 6, 7 times. They've had executives up from Baltimore numerous times. We've discussed the situation. I think Mr. Pantel rightly said, this isn't only a problem that exists for Erickson, but it's a regional problem. This extends from Berkeley Heights, from Reynolds Hospital, their nursing homes. We have Summit Health. We have Lantern Hill. We have Spring Grove here. Summit, you have Oaks Hospital. So everybody's getting pulled in all different directions. We have spoke with Atlantic at one meeting for a few hours, and they committed to us that they're increasing their staff, their EMTs, and their equipment, so they can more satisfy their commitment to not only Lantern Hill, but the other communities that they serve. We spoke extensively with Union County and spoke with Mr. Scanio, who's in charge of emergency management within the county, and his assistant, who is in charge of all the rescue squad. Now, Plainfield has a county ambulance just assigned to them. And I think there's another town, bigger town, that has an ambulance to them. And we were discussing with them, maybe they should construct a substation up here on the ridge to handle the overflow. They weren't against it, but things like this take time and funding. So I've spoke to a couple commissioners already, and they said, listen, we'll help you get it through. And I know Mrs. Carroll, you talked to a few too. And they understand the problem. The high-density housing coming to all the towns. We haven't even thought about Nokia yet. And they're supposed to be leaving in the middle of 2028. And I know that's been pushed off a little. So there's a lot to consider. But not only myself, but EMS, New Providence EMS, Jess Short, she was in the meetings, Bernadette, Dan Henn, and Vinnie Wyco, the fire chief, was also in a few of them. We understand what needs to be done, and we will take care of business the best we can. So far, yeah, there's volume, but Lantern Hill is going to change some policies about, what are emergency calls, what aren't. They've come a long way and really went out of their way to work with us. We're satisfied, and if we see trends coming in the future, we're going to address them, and they've been quite upfront, and we're talking about quarterly meetings that we can have to go through the whole thing, but they're not the only ones involved. We have like Garden Homes over here, where the Bard property is, and then the one going up with the Lindy building. So I just want to say we're working on it, and there's no just short-term solution right this minute. But just know that we're working on it, and we want this thing to proceed, and we will get to the promised land. We're also, other towns are doing hybrid services. We haven't even gotten into that with our rescue squad. We've talked about it a little bit with the fire department. So, there's different options out there. We want to talk to different towns, different ways they do things. Why reinvent the wheel if it's already been invented? So that's where we are right now. And I just wanted to clarify what happened over the last couple months since. And I was one of the big mouths that brought it up, like Hans said, and so did Dan. But we did that just to get the discussion rolling, and we were very satisfied with the reaction we got from Erickson. So that's where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other comments? No other comments. Okay, Mr. Pantel, do you want to finish up?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. First of all, I do want to thank the board very much and your professionals for the attention and time and effort that you have devoted to this application. It's been a lot over a considerable period of time, and we don't take that for granted. So we know that you have given this a lot of thought and a lot of thoughtful consideration. Number one, needless to say, I was very pleased to hear what the mayor just said about what we've been trying to work with the borough on, and I think what we have worked quite successfully with the borough on. The application is, of course, an application for amended site plan approval to potentially reduce the number of previously approved units for the Lantern Hill CCRC by 218 if the conversion of independent living units, that is 45 independent living units to 85 healthcare units, does not take place, or to reduce it by 178 or 15% if that conversion does take place, which, as you know, can occur in either neighborhood 1 and or in neighborhood 2. So I think that's, we've heard from a lot of commenters over the course of the hearings that this doubles the size of the Lantern Hill. It actually reduces what was previously approved, and if approved, it actually falls a bit short of doubling what has been approved, and it is a considerable reduction of either 15 or 18% in the total number of units that has been approved. The application is, of course, for an inherently beneficial use, which automatically satisfies the positive criteria for the grant of the use variance under the municipal land use law, number one. Indeed, this board has found in several prior resolutions, including in 2011, resolution of May 16th, 2011, resolution of May 4th, 2015, a resolution on June 5th of 2017, that the application, of course, constitutes approval of an inherently beneficial use. We are proposing that conversion, also the combined access between the two units, hence the request for use variance, especially if that conversion were to take place in neighborhood 1. Bear in mind, as the board knows, there's no proposed increase in the building footprint, architecture, etc. for neighborhood 1. This conversion of units, if it does take place in neighborhood 1, will all be internal to the existing buildings. So there's no external impacts in terms of additional visual impact, in terms of additional noise, light, etc. It's all going to be purely internal to the building in neighborhood 1 if it occurs there. And of course, the use is totally permitted in neighborhood 2, which is in your CCRCO zone, which specifically allows, of course, the proposed continuing care community use. And as you know, we're reducing what was previously approved there. Nonetheless, there were a number of issues besides ambulance service that were raised by the board members in various thoughtful and sincere comments throughout the meetings. I'm not going to go over ambulance service again. I'm sure you'll probably thank me for that. But let me just mention a few others and our responses to those. One, there were concerns about potential noise from the pickleball court. We have withdrawn the pickleball court from this application. Obviously, the Erickson could always come back with the pickleball court, but at that point it'd be put under its own magnifying glass. It's not part of this application. At this point, we don't have any intention to come back to the board right now, number one. And of course, replacing that pickleball court with what I dare say is one of the most quiet outdoor uses, namely the community garden. And where we had the community garden previously, it will be just lawn area. Number one. Number two, there were various concerns raised about the gatehouse and potential traffic back up onto Mountain Avenue as a result of the gatehouse, notwithstanding that the traffic engineers seemed fine with it and the driveway widening would accommodate it and there was sufficient queuing space. That all said, we eliminated the gatehouse as part of the application. And that, by the way, also had the effect of preserving some of the mature trees that might have had to come down if we did that driveway widening. Another point that came up during the hearings, concerns about parking and for delivery vehicles. We added 2 pull-off parking spaces right near Union Square, which is the main drop-off point for the likes of Amazon and Federal Express. The engineer's comments included a concern about the need for grinder facilities in pump stations, not only for neighborhood 2, which is proposed, but also for neighborhood 1, which exists, in light of materials that may be coming through the sewer system into the public sewer facility, which could have the potential for some clogging of the system. We have agreed at the applicant's expense to install grinder facilities for both Neighborhood 1 and Neighborhood 2 in new pumps that would be installed for both neighborhoods, and to agree to enter into an agreement with the borough for the reasonable maintenance of those grinder facilities at the applicant's expense. There was concern about some parking in fire lanes. We've agreed to enhanced enforcement of the prohibition against parking in fire lanes. There was concern about emergency vehicles operated by the borough having access through the one remaining driveway control arm, which will be at the Southgate Road entrance in accordance with the prior approval, because, and that remains because the board wanted to assure that that driveway would be used only for employees and residents. And we will provide, nevertheless, though, access cards to all of your emergency vehicle operators in the borough so that they would have ready access through that control gate at the Southgate Road driveway. There's no longer a proposed control gate at the South Street driveway. That vanished with the gatehouse. And, of course, there's no longer a control gate for the main entrance from Mountain Avenue up towards Union Square. There were concerns about the use of Southgate Road during construction, and it was agreed that contractors will be directed to enter the construction site via Mountain Avenue. There will be signage to that effect to prohibit right turns by construction vehicles exiting the site onto Southgate Road. So they're not going to go up Southgate Road. They're going to be entering via Mountain Avenue. And our CCRC jitneys, again, will be directed not to make, that is the Erickson jitneys providing transportation service to our residents, will be instructed no right turns onto Southgate Road. So if they want to go to downtown New Providence, they're going to go out South Street and avoid the impact on Southgate Road in light of concerns that were raised, frankly, not so much in this hearing, but in the prior hearing where we had the approval in 2021. For those of you who are here, I'm sure you'll remember that. There were concerns about overnight truck unloading operations. None are scheduled for the overnight hours, subject, of course, to a potential exception for an emergency. There are some concerns about landscaping. We have agreed to very specific measures to assure that there would be screening of the landscaping and enhancement of existing tree planting along Mountain Avenue and Southgate Road with 3-inch caliper trees as may be needed upon installation. We agreed to assess the health of the Southgate Road tree buffer and to replace and install trees accordingly, subject to the reasonable approval of the board engineer at a maximum 3-inch caliper. We agreed to install perimeter tree buffer along Southgate Road and Mountain Avenue in connection with the construction of building 2.1 and 2.2. So in other words, our initial construction in neighborhood 2 triggers the perimeter tree buffer along Southgate Road and Mountain Avenue. And lastly, we also agreed to remove dead ash trees and, depending upon available sunlight, to install evergreen trees, maple trees, and other ornamental plantings along internal driveway near buildings 2.3 and 2.4, which was generally consistent with Exhibit A17, which was prepared by our landscape architect. That exhibit was entitled Planting Along the Northern Loop Road. The application is largely fully conforming. There is the variance I mentioned with respect to use on neighborhood 2 to accommodate that conversion and that conversion, number one. Number two, there is a waiver that's been requested for lighting of 1.3 foot candles for the illumination or light fixture at the Mountain Avenue driveway. The ordinance allows 0.5 foot candles. It was felt by our engineer that something more along the lines of 1.3 foot candles would be practicable, and that it would be more than reasonable to grant a waiver from that lighting requirement under the municipal land use law. There's one bulk variance for the building in neighborhood 2, building 2.2. Has a building length of 311 feet. The ordinance allows a maximum of 200 or 340 if a parking deck were under the building. There's no parking deck proposed under that building, so technically the requirement is 200, not 340, so a variance is requested for that building. You heard that from testimony from the architect and our planner, that the purpose of that ordinance is, of course, aesthetic, to make sure you don't have long, monolithic, boring, unattractive buildings. That building has all the articulation and building skin compatible with all of the other attractive buildings within the community. And in fact, one can make the point that maybe it's even a little more attractive than the other buildings because it won't have, a garage entrance, which is sometimes not the most attractive feature of this sort of building. What we're also doing as part of the proposed CCRC is enhancing quality of life, maybe something that hasn't been mentioned quite enough in the course of the hearings. Enhancing quality of life of our current and future residents. Besides the high-quality architecture and extensive buffering, numerous new amenities will be offered, including new dining facility, new all-purpose room and gym with sufficient space for, I understand, at least one, if not two, indoor pickleball courts, a creative arts room, salon and barber shop, a fitness terrace, a life enrichment center, outdoor courtyard, dog park, community garden, and again, another community garden, and again, a host of nice amenities that will be available to all of the residents. And again, this traffic control gate, Southgate Road, limits that use to drive to employees and residents. So you've heard, I think, some very compelling testimony from our land planner, Michael Tobia, and I dare say from our other experts, our architect, Tyler Depew, our engineer, Rob Strecker, landscape architect, Amal Deshpande, our traffic engineer, John Harder, indicating that there clearly are no negative impacts associated with the application in terms of light, drainage, traffic, etc. Any of the usual features that one could imagine that could be associated with the development have been appropriately mitigated here. And for all of those reasons, and those articulated perhaps better by my land planner and my other professionals who testified, I would respectfully ask that the application be approved by the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so that brings an end to this hearing. We will officially close the hearing, and the board can discuss it now. And
one thing top of mind, Mr. Pintel said that, and thank you, a great closing statement, Mr. Pintel. But and I'm not trying to have another meeting just to talk about this topic I'm about to bring out, but the jitney. I don't have a problem with the jitney making a right on the right of way. These are our residents. And if it's a safer route, a quicker route, I mean, they should have access to every street that we as residents have access to. And if they're going to the center of town, the jitney is just a van driving our residents. I mean,
it was agreed and resolved in
I mean,
the last
I'm just saying, for the record, I mean, I know we talked about UPS, 18-wheelers, FedEx, I understand that, but these are our residents, and I don't want to just restrict them to having to go in and out one way. I'm just saying that the jitney, to me, can make a right on right away.
I don't want to start debating and changing things that we all agreed to already. Right?
Okay.
I mean, I think there were.
Yeah.
The point is, I get what you're saying. If we were restricting them from a particular, like from going to a specific place in town and saying like, the jitney can't go to the community
Yeah, it's
pool.
a simple van. I see it all the time at OLP.
Weird.
I mean, yeah.
But
I'm just.
we had residents come in and ask for that. They specifically
For the
said-
jitney?
They said jitney.
Okay.
That was in the 2021.
Okay.
Right? And, this was an accommodation that they made. And since they're still willing to make it, I see no reason for us to pull it.
Yep, okay.
Because we had a lot of the
I know we had a lot
right
of discussion around deliveries and trucks and.
height of buildings, shade, trees.
Cutting through town, it was through town, but these are our residents, and I just want to go on the record saying that.
Yeah, I mean, it's residents in the private vehicles can make that right turn. It's the jitneys themselves, so, yeah.
Yep.
We do have commercial vehicle restrictions all over town that tell you you've got to go down these particular routes. I think it's just, it's a nice, simple resolution that everybody agreed to. I don't think there's any point in messing with it.
Well said.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad to go. It's been a long year, and I have a couple notes here for my comments, just so I'm as concise and precise as possible. So give me 90 seconds, I'll wrap it up. But the first thing I want to say is thank you to the applicant and all the professionals who worked on this application for over a year. I'm sure many of you well over a year, so thank you, everybody. To the public, I want to make sure everyone understands that the only evidence that we have is what's presented to us. We're not in any other meetings, nor can we be. We cannot do our own research. The only way to get more information is for us to ask questions, and I know we asked a lot of questions. So I want to thank the applicant for their patience as we tried to understand the progress made, especially on the ambulance issue. I truly believe it's an important issue that is worthy of our time. When we started the hearing last year, there was a real issue about the ambulance service, as we know. It wasn't posed as a hypothetical problem for the future, but that there was a real problem that existed today. The testimony was that it's a problem that would only grow and would substantially impact the borough if the complex was to grow in size as proposed. As the applicant knows, but I think it's important for the public to know, because certainly before I wasn't on this board, I had no idea how this process worked. I just want everyone to understand that the board has a legal obligation to the municipal land use law. So approval or denial of any application is not based on our opinions alone. It's our opinion and best judgment within the framework that the state law provides. In this way, it's similar to jury instructions. Not exactly, but similar. But with this updated letter from the borough, I want to be clear, I'm very comfortable that the application meets the criteria outlined in the statute, and that granting the application would not bring substantial detriment to the borough. So I'm comfortable with moving forward with the application. If the town professionals and leadership are comfortable, I'm comfortable. The borough officials are in the best position to say that there was a problem, as they did, and now I trust them when they say there's a solution on the horizon to the problem. I agree the Union County substation is a great solution, and it's one that wasn't presented as an option in last year's hearings, so it's definitely a lot of progress has been made. Of course, it would be nice to have something more concrete from the county, but as we've seen in the Atlantic contract, even a signed contract doesn't mean everything is going to work out perfectly. We certainly don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. On the issue of the left-hand turn lane, I'm also convinced at this point that because of all the traffic from the complex is no longer going to be concentrated on one main entrance on Mountain Avenue because they removed the guard gate, that the left-hand turn lane is not something that needs to happen overnight or immediately. But I do believe it must happen, and therefore I'm comfortable with what the board and the applicant have agreed to at this point. And if the left-hand lane has a hiccup, they'll have to come back to us to resolve the issue. On the pickleball court, I will say, if you do want a pickleball court, I'm happy to hear in the future. I have no problem with a pickleball court per se. I think you made a good point. If you guys are, against the municipal sound ordinances, then we can address it at the time. But again, happy to come back to hear that case. So, Mr. Chairman, I believe the application is much improved, and I will support it.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'll just make a couple. I think the applicant has gone a long way towards addressing a lot of things, and I think we've covered most of them, so I'm not going to rehash everything that was just said, but I do appreciate the level of effort that they've put in to this resolution. As Steve and Mitch said, we can't hold their feet to the fire and ask for a final solution to a problem that is always changing and always evolving. And I don't think, at least from my perspective, I never believed that pushing for an answer was going to get me an answer, and that was never my intention, right? This is more of a, and for the public to understand how these things also work in the future, when they come back or other people come back, is a good neighbor problem, right? This is, to the question of whether or not we actually could vote no because of the EMS thing, I don't think we'd ever take it to that level. It's more a question of, does the applicant want to fight that battle that way, or accommodate the requests and the needs of the neighborhoods around them and the borough that they're going to live in? And that's what I think they've done a good job of, right? is trying to be the best neighbor they can and saying, you know what, why can't we make that right turn? Just because there's 3 houses right next door that don't want to see a shuttle bus coming by all the time, let's make a right turn anyway. No, they said they'd be good neighbors and put up a gatehouse and, not send shuttle buses down that way. The EMS thing is obviously a much different question and a much bigger one, but I'm really happy to see how things went. And like Steve, I can't really do anything but take the opinion of the experts that's been put in front of me. At this point, if they are comfortable and they're not pushing for more related to this application, obviously they're going to continue pushing for more resolution forever, right? Because it's an evolving problem. It's always going to need more. But if they're happy now as regards this application, then I don't see any reason that I could say no. And so I won't. I will be absolutely in support of this because I think it's a good thing for our town as well, right? To have this kind of community and these kinds of neighbors. So.
I agree, Hans. I think, first of all, Mr. Pintel, and to the applicants, thank you for the presentations. I know it's been a long process. To the public, to Mr. Pereira, to Mr. Peoples, to Ms. Pasquale, to Mr. Swanson, thank you for your comments. To Mayor Al Morgan and your questions, they were spot on. And this has been a long process. And from the very first meeting years ago, EMS was always top of mind for not only me, but for many of us. And, I've become more comfortable not just seeing this letter, but hearing the testimony. I love when hearing Mayor Al Morgan speak about what could be possible with hybrid and different options. And yes, things aren't going to happen tomorrow, and the town's growing, it's evolving, and that's a good thing. But as that grows, we'll figure these things out. And again, I still think we need to have an additional meeting for a second pickleball court. But no, I'm fine with this application.
Anyone else? Good. Okay. That having all been said, I look for a motion to either approve or deny the request.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the application.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Poll the board, please.
Wait, with just I think just one stipulation, with what you said, Mr. Rumsfeld, which was great, the quarterly communication.
Well, yeah, it's
been testified. Okay.
And testified too, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a number of conditions. I think
There's
we
a
have.
lot.
Yeah, we have a lot of conditions, and we're going to go through with the memos and whatnot, but we trust our professionals, and we're going to leave it up to them for the most part to go through the review memos, so we're not going to set forth every single condition that's in those reviews. I think that'd be like 300 conditions.
Yeah.
But we do have a specific list of conditions that were gone through during the various hearings. I don't know if you want me to go through them. There's about 20.
Probably not.
Okay.
No, I think.
Didn't think so, but I figured I'd ask.
So that's the
I
new
think
one that came up
Ms.
today.
Merch's Starbucks cup is empty, so you need another full cup.
And you will have a chance to review it, obviously, when you review the resolutions.
Yeah. So with that said, yeah, I'll
Poll the
second.
board then.
I just wanted to let you know, Mr. Ping missed 2 of the meetings, but he read the transcript and watched the live stream. He signed an affidavit. He's eligible to vote.
Okay. And we need 5 affirmative votes.
Need 5. Mr. Amelspon?
Yes, please.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Sirochin?
Yes.
And Chairman Nadelberg?
Yes. Okay. So unanimous approval on that after all these years. Congratulations.
As you know, we definitely appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, a little more business for us here. Not much. We did most of it before. Actually, we did all of it before, didn't we?
We got miscellaneous and adjournment.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
We can do anything, comments, questions, anybody? Yeah. All right, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Good night.
What did Jeff say? Don't you dare?
Are the after parties at your house?
It was good.
That was good.
Didn't wrap up the meeting. That was great.
Thank